I struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and that is when you undergo a traumatic event or several and you sometimes relive it through things such as vivid flashbacks, nightmares. It really takes a lot of grounding and, coping strategies to really kind of get yourself centered back in the present. I feel like one part of PTSD that people overlook or might not fully understand is that it can manifest very physically. Sometimes flashbacks or kind of reliving that moment can come in the form of shaking, or some people might close their eyes because they are seeing something, and so it can manifest very physically, and it can look very different for every person. It usually looks in the form of anniversaries, so sometimes certain times of year or certain dates will be kind of attached to a specific memory, and subconsciously or like without even thinking about it, I will be very drained, I will be very closed off, I'll have trouble eating on said date or time of year, and it takes me a minute to kind of realize what's going on, but that's kind of the biggest way it manifests for me. I have often found I've had to kind of explain my diagnosis for a long time, and not only just for older people who associate it with World War II or what we call capital T trauma, but also to myself, because when I was diagnosed I was 17 years old. I grew up very fortunate. I'm very lucky that I grew up going to good schools. I have a very supportive family. I have incredible friends. But back then when I was 17, I didn't really understand that mental health doesn't discriminate, and with PTSD, that's very much the case. Going into the mental health field as a future social worker, I have really done a lot of my research projects and different assignments on PTSD because I want to understand it better to help my future clients who are experiencing that same journey of, oh, but it's not justified because I didn't serve in the military, or I didn't experience a natural disaster. It doesn't have to be to that scale. Sometimes it gets passed down, and I've had to explain to peers in classes and things like that it's not always as simple and black and white as people make it to be. But just because you might not have experienced that big capital T trauma does not mean that your PTSD is not valid.